everyone. I'm going to be reading today to you. I'm going to be reading a story called Toro by Morpurgo. And as you can see, it is in Spanish, the title Toro because it's a story based in the south of Spain, in Andalusia. I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to read the blurb for you. I am quite excited because it's going to be about animals and then about bulls, which, if you think about what happened with bulls in Spain, what Spain is really famous for, you may think that it's going to be now quite emotive story, alright? I didn't tell Paco what I've seen that day. I didn't ever want him to know. I will take you away so you can live wild up in the hills, where you will be safe forever and ever. I will work something out, I promise you. Antonio lives an idyllic life on his parents' bull farm in Spain, but the idyll is shattered when he realizes that his calf, Paco, is destined for the bull ring. What can he do? He has daring plan, but it will take enormous courage to see it through, because it is 1936 and the drums of war are echoing across the Spanish plains. Okay, let me show you first an old Paco. This is who the story is going to be about. I am the proud grandfather of a wonderful grandson. I have been for 8 years. The two of us are very close. Somehow we know each other instinctively, like twins, in spite of the 60 years between us. We even share the same name. Nowadays they call me abuelo, grandpa. But when I was little, I was always called Antoñito, like him. It isn't only by his name that Antoñito reminds me of me. Until yesterday, being a grandfather had been a simple joy, all the pleasures of fatherhood, and few of the cares and woes. Then yesterday afternoon, up in his bedroom, Antoñito asked me a question that had to be answered properly, honestly, and without circumvention. It was little enough thing that began it. It happened during the siesta. Antoñito was bored. He was just messing around as children do. All he did was kick a football through a window by accident. When his mother came storming out into the garden, Antoñito was standing there in his Barcelona shirt, looking as guilty as sin. He hadn't run off. He's not like that. There was no one else around except the cat and me. And we were having our afternoon nap under the mimosa tree at the bottom of the garden, well away from the scene of the crime. So Antoñito had to be the culprit. He was for it, and there was nothing I could do to help him. Antoñito! How many times have I told you? I could see that chin of his was jutting already, and I knew there would be tears welling up inside him. I could sense what he was going to say before he even said it. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Honest. And it was all said with such utter conviction, such determined defiance. Asked for an alternative explanation, he shrugged innocently at his mother, pursed his lips and refused to speak. That one shrug was enough to send his mother into paroxysm of rage. He was a careless, thoughtless, lying little toad and should be ashamed of himself. Antoñito was banished to his bedroom. For some time afterwards, I could hear him crying and then whimpering quietly in his misery and his shame. I longed to go up and console him, but had to give my time until I was sure his mother had gone out. Grandfathers have to be careful in such matters before making my way into the house and upstairs. I knocked and opened the door. Antoñito was sitting on his bed, chin still jutting, until he saw it was me. "Hello, old fella," I said, and went to sit down beside him. Neither of us could think what to say, so we said nothing. We often said nothing together. We were silent for some time. Then, out of the silence came the question. "Abuelo, when you were little, did you ever do bad things? I mean, really bad things? Did you ever tell a lie?" "Plenty," I say. This was quite true, of course, but I should have left it at that. Instead, seeking to emphasize, wanting to make him feel better, I went on. "I'm telling you, Antoñito, I was a whole lot better at bad things than you are. And as for lying, I was pretty good at that too." He looked up at me with his wide eyes. "Honestly," he said, Honestly, I replied. Will I lie to you, Antonito? He smiled at that and brushed the tear stains from his cheeks. I felt I had said the right thing. Are you going to come down now and pick up the glass with me? I asked. And then you can make your peace with your mother when she comes back, can ya? But I could tell he wasn't listening to me, even as I was speaking. Abuelo, he said, when you were little, what was the very worstest thing you ever did? I had thought he would take it any further. I hadn't thought he would take it any further. I was on the spot now. I had a mountain of worstest things to choose from, but he had asked me for the very worstest, and I knew at once what that was. I've told no one else in near enough 70 years. Not the real story, not all of it. It seemed somehow the moment to tell it, and it seemed too that if anyone had the right to know it, it was my grandson. I felt it was in some way his birthright, his inheritance. I knew too that he expected truth from me, so I told him the truth, the whole truth. If I tell you something, Antonito, I say, it will have to be our secret. No one else must know, not until you are a father yourself, and then you can tell your own children. That's only as it should be. After all, it is our story I'm talking about, yours and theirs too. Not a word till then, promise? Promise, he said, and I knew he meant it. I could feel his eyes willing me on, so I began. I haven't always lived here in town in Malaga, but you know that already, don't you? I've told you before, haven't I? How I was born on a farm, how I grew up in the countryside with animals all around me. Over the years, I've told him dozens of tales about my country childhood in Andalusia. He loved to hear all about the animals, but I've promised him something much more exciting this time, and I could see he was full of expectation. This is not just another of my animal stories, Antonito. Well, in one sense it is, I suppose, but this is the most important story I could tell you, because this story changed my life forever. I will begin at the beginning, shall I? I was born in a small farmhouse just outside the village of Sauceda on the 1st of May of 1930. There was my older sister, Maria, 10 years older than me to the day, and mother and father. Just the four of us. We had uncles and aunts and cousins all around, of course. The whole village was like one big family, but we can skip all that. It was another birth about 5 years after my own that really began it all. The farm didn't belong to father. Hardly anyone owned the land they worked in those days. We just farmed it. It was a hard life, but I knew little of that. For me, it was a magical place to grow up. There were corks forests all around. We've harvested the cork and cut it off the trees every 9 years to make corks for wine bottles. We had our little black pigs wandering everywhere, and dozens of goats for our milk and cheese, and chickens too, never short of eggs for an omelette. We had mules too for bringing the cork down from the hillsides, and horses. Everyone had horses or mules in those days. I could ride almost as soon as I could walk, but mostly it was cows we kept. Not those lovely reddy brown rositos you often see in our countryside. Ours were black and beautiful and brave. My father bred only black bulls for the corrida, for the bull ring. We must have had 50 or 60 of them, I suppose, counting all the calves. Magnificent they were, the best in all Andalusia, my father always said. As a small boy, I would spend hours and hours standing on the fence just watching them, marveling at their wild eyes, their wicked-looking horns, their shining coats. I love it when they lift their heads and snort at me, when they pawed the ground, kicking up great clouds of dust and dirt. To me, they were simply the noblest, the most exciting creatures on God's earth. At that age, though, I had no real idea, not understanding of what they were kept for. They were just out there grazing in their corrals, part of the landscape of my life. I didn't ask much questions, not at 5 years old. Out in the cork forest, I will see the red deer in amongst the trees, the wild boar bolting through the undergrowth, and the griffon vultures floating high up in the sky. I didn't ask what they were there for either. Life seemed simple enough when you were 5 years old. Then Paco came, and the war came, and the bombing planes came, and nothing was ever to be simple again. There was a terrible thunderstorm the night Paco was born. Father asked me if I was frightened. I remember, and I say no, which wasn't true. And Maria said I was. She and I fought like cats sometimes, but I thought the world of her and she of me. So that's why I went outside into the storm with Father that night, to prove to Maria that I wasn't afraid. I followed Father's swinging lantern across the yard to the barn, hoping and praying the lightning wouldn't see the lantern and strike us dead. The mother cow was lying down when we got to the barn, and 2 little white feet were already showing from under her tail. I looked on as Father crouched down behind her, took the calf by his feet, leaned back and howled on him. There was some grunting and groaning from both Father and the cow. There was very little blood, and it was quickly over. The calf slipped quite easily out into the wall, and there he lay, shining black and steaming in the straw, shaking his head free of the clinging membranes. "Bull," Father told me. "We've got a fine little bull." He knelt over him, lifted his head and poked a piece of straw down his nostrils. "It will help him breathe in better," he said. The cow was trying to get to her feet. Father moved smartly away and took me with him. She was bellowing at us and giving us the evil eye, making it very clear that she didn't want us anywhere near the calf. But try as she might, the cow could not get up onto her feet. She just didn't seem to have the strength. Time and again she almost made it, but then her legs would collapse and she would be down again. In the end she gave up and sat there, breathing heavily and looking bewildered and frightened. Father did all he could to help her, but her only response now was to toss her horns at him angrily. He shouted and whooped at her, clapped her sides, twisted her tail, anything to panic her, to put her on her feet, but nothing will shift her. "That calf has to drink, and soon," he told me, "or he won't live, and he won't be able to drink unless he stands up." I joined in now, screaming at the cow to get up, slapping her, jumping up and down, but still she couldn't do it. She was stretched on her side now, completely exhausted by all her efforts. "Only one thing of it," said Father. Crouching down beside her, he stripped some milk under the other into the bucket. Then he poured it into a bottle with a tip onto it, lifted the calf's head and dribbled the milk down his throat until the last he suckled. All the time, though, he was struggling against it, fighting the bottle, fighting Father. "We've got a brave one here," said Father. I will hold him, Antonito. You feed him." And he handed me the bottle. So there I was, feeding the calf myself. I talked to him as I fed him, and he was calmer at once. I told him how beautiful he was, how he was going to be the finest bull in all of Spain. He sucked, and his eyes looked into mine and mine into his, and I loved him. After a while, Father had no need to hold him anymore. I told Father he should be called Paco, and Father said that it was a fine and proper name for such a brave bull. But I could see Father was becoming more and more anxious about Paco's mother. She was weakening all the time, despite his best effort. It was only a couple of hours later that she breathed one last sigh and died. In that one night, I had witnessed my first birth and my first death. And that's them two together, which I think that they're going to make such an amazing relationship. And then that's why maybe after it will be sad if they have to send him to the bull ring. Right, I hope that you all enjoy it as much as I have. I'm going to finish it now. And then if you buy the book, if you like it, just let me know. And then we can share reviews. We can say how you found it, what was your best bit of it. Okay, adios, bye-bye.